am calling the Budget Committee meeting to order at 6:32 p.m. Can I get a roll call, please?
Ken Dobson,
Here.
Ken Capuso,
Here.
Dennis Heffernan,
Here.
Lauren Millette,
Here.
Robert Zukas,
Here.
Darrell Britton,
Here.
Peter Bacci,
Here.
Bob Hamilton. Here. Julian Fiska,
Here.
and Jim Roche.
Thank you. Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is anyone here for public comment, or are they just here for your presentation? Okay. So without further ado, I'll introduce the fire chief. Thank you.
Thank you all for taking the time to give our budget another look and to see where we need to make some improvements and possibly helping us fund some future plans here. All right, where'd the IT guy go?
Dean, do you want me to call down for help?
Yeah, it's not wanting to go to the next slide.
Oh,
Yep, maybe that'll work. We could do that.
Okay.
So what I've started with here is your questions that you emailed me. I figured I would address those first. Within that model, I have a couple guests I'd like to let them give some impact statements to you all about as well. So the first question that was sent was, what is the anticipated timeline and cost of replacing the tower truck? We are currently working within our capital improvement plan with that. Maybe 12 to 24 months. It's still early in the preliminary phase of looking at cost, looking at some different funding models and such as well to try to get one purchased. We are in dire need of replacing the ladder truck. The one that we currently have has significant problems with for example, the fire pump doesn't work on it. The safety switches overwork. They're worn out, so sometimes they don't read like they're working, so it doesn't let you do something. So it's not like unsafe to use. It's preventing us from throwing the ladder up in the air because it doesn't think the stabilizers are out and such. So the last call we ran it on a couple weeks ago, it took probably 15 minutes just to get the ladder up in the air to get it to the building. We've spent in the last 6 years, I think it was, about $70,000 fixing things on it. And it just keeps getting bigger. To fix the fire pump on it, you're looking at about $30,000 to $40,000 to fix something that's on a platform that's 30 years old. So we are most definitely looking at trying to get that replaced as soon as we possibly can and looking at some different models there.
Don't we have that annually inspected by an outside agency?
We do. It's coming up next month to get its annual inspection this year.
Okay. Was it mentioned in last year's report that it needed to be replaced? Because this is the first we've heard about it.
I couldn't tell you. That was before my tenure.
But there's always a hard copy of those reports.
So
So somebody must be aware that
the
either it was or it was not in need of repair.
in the capital improvement plan, it's a little bit down on the list, but it's not going to make it until that date. So, we could kind of kick the ball down the street a little bit, but it's not going to make it to that date.
That's not my point. My point is we pay an outside agency to annually inspect it. They are the ones that should be telling us that this needs to be replaced.
So,
It should have been in the report last year. It shouldn't all of a sudden.
so it's not needing to be replaced because there's structural damage or because the chassis is rotting. All right, so that's where they would step in and say it needs to be replaced. As long as it passes the test, they're not going to tell us it needs to be replaced. We look at the fire department side is functionality. Is it functioning as it should? No, it is not functioning as it should. Is there issues within on the platform that prevents it from being set up and used in a timely fashion? Yes, those independent inspection companies don't look at that. They just report that it's structurally sound. The other thing is you look at is how many days a year is it out of service because of maintenance? Dependability. That's huge with emergency service vehicles. So you start looking at, and then cost of maintenance. You know, so you look at how much money that we're throwing in that ladder truck, keeping it up. At what point do you see that it's no longer dependable and budget worthy to continue down that path and move it up on the replacement schedule?
And the cost will be?
We're still determining that. You know, a brand-new ladder truck is about $1.2, $1.3 million.
Can you hold it? Because I want him to do his presentation and then have questions asked at the end. Is that okay with everybody? I think it'll be smoother that way.
I think
Can you
that's
hold the
Wait till the
question?
end?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
So how many full-time staff, or how many full-time fire department positions are needed to staff from 6 PM to 6 AM? Absolutely none. We have never asked for, and we are not asking for right now, full-time people. We are wanting to utilize our call membership on a per diem staffing basis and utilize our own in-house staff to man it from 6 PM to 6 AM. So absolutely no full-time positions are being asked for in this budget. Is there a document of ISO ratings of cities and towns in New Hampshire? Yes, there is. That's why I give you that printout if you need an email or the website address. It's ecommerce.commerceinsurance.com. That's nothing I could print out to give you. It's all interactive. So when you go to that website, it's in alphabetical order. You click on it, it'll bring up the towns. You could put in a zip code if you want, or bring up the towns. It'll bring up different classifications as well. I do have a representative from the insurance industry here tonight who's also going to talk about other towns in ISO and our ISO score as well. What is the plan to use the SCBA fund? We're going to request for expenditure in this 2021 budget. So that should have been asked for last year, I think is when it was up. We are well past due with needing to replace our SCBA's. The previous chief did a good job trying to get some grant funding for a couple of years, which was unsuccessful. The town has done an excellent job putting money in the capital improvement plan, so we will be going after those funds this year to replace our air packs. Is there a savings by having 2 firefighters on the overnight shift versus on-call? So before I answer that question, I'm going to bring some people up to the table here and let them discuss their impact that they've had because of a fire loss that they've experienced. So the first two I'd like to bring up is Doug and Nicole Thompson. On April 7th of 2020 at 10 a.m., our 911 center received a call of a reported house fire. From the time of dispatch to arrival was 7 minutes on the engine. So we left the fire station and we were at their house within 7 minutes addressing their need. What's important to see here is they live 3 miles from the fire station. So we had a very significant travel time to get there. This was during the day when we have staff people at the fire department. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board, for listening, Budget Committee for having us here today. I wasn't home at the time, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know. So on April 7th, I just arrived to work when I got a call from my 13-year-old daughter that the house was on fire.
So, as you know, with COVID, we have 4 children that were home, being remote schooled. Our 3rd floor walk-up attic is converted into a bedroom for our 2 boys. Was working at the kitchen table with my 4-year-old at the time and my 7-year-old, and my 15-year-old came downstairs and said, "There's some popping in the ceiling, my lights went out." So he tends to over-exaggerate a little bit. So thankfully I didn't put it off, and I walked upstairs, and it was a very loud sound coming from the roof. Didn't smell any smoke, didn't have any heat, but I said, let's just be safe, let's evacuate, and called 911. By the time we got outside, we could see smoke rising from our roof. No smoke alarms or anything had come off again, like no heat. But it was amazing that the fire department was there within 7 minutes of my phone call. And the amount of people that were there, I think I counted 12 fire trucks. It was
Between the
police.
various towns.
Yeah, I mean, it was overwhelming, the amount of people that were there. The fire, I believe, was put out within 13 minutes, salvaging the majority of our house. So,
Fortunately,
yeah,
I live 12 miles from our home.
work.
I work 12 miles from home, and by the time I returned home, doing probably more than 65 miles an hour, the fire was put out. So I was very fortunate my family was safe out, and this happened during the day. Fortunately, because of COVID, being homeschooled, we recognized the fire right away. I couldn't imagine this fire happening at 10 o'clock at night or midnight with no smoke detectors, no fire detectors going off. The house would have been engulfed at that point. Extensive water damage, but it could have been much worse. So I'm very thankful for all the volunteers that showed up that day. And I can't say enough good things about fire rescue and the police department in general.
Do you have any questions for us at all?
Anybody have? Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna bring up another person here. So I invited Dean and Gail to come. I'm not sure if they got held up somewhere. So I'm just gonna give you a brief synopsis of their emergency. On August 30th, 2018, at 5:52 a.m., during a time that the fire station is not staffed. Now, luckily for them, the staff was just coming in because they start their shift at 6 a.m. They experienced a house fire. They had a significant loss. From time of dispatch to the arrival of the first engine was 11 minutes. Their house is 1.1 miles from the fire station. That should have been about a minute and a half drive time for us to get there. We should have been able to shave off, or we can shave off. Instead of that being 11 minutes, we should have been able to be there in 3 minutes. The scary thing about this call is when you listen to the 911 tape, it's not the homeowner calling 911. It's someone driving down the street reporting that someone's house is on fire, and they're telling us to get there now. They don't want us there in 10 minutes from now. They don't want us there tomorrow. They want us there now. We want to get there now because we don't know if the person that's inside the house is still asleep and trapped in their house and maybe suffering from respiratory compromise from the fire. So to kind of tie some stuff up on savings, I wanted to bring a representative from the insurance industry here to kind of talk about ISO ratings and the importance of stop loss, meaning that we want to stop the destruction from occurring to prevent a high value dollar loss on your insurance claim. So.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for listening to me. I appreciate it. 11 minutes, that just kind of blows my mind, first of all. That goes from, taking, if you're there in 2 minutes, maybe $5,000, $10,000 damage to, $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 in damage. So that's just seeing that just kind of blew my mind there. But the reason Chris asked me here was really the insurance services. And basically, it's a town class score, and how to bring that down could actually save money on your insurance. And what that means is training for firefighters, just doing the training, staffing, like he was saying. Insurance looks at those scores, and when they see those scores, that brings the cost of the insurance down for the homeowners. So really, it's a long-term financial impact for everyone, where as a town, a community, you can see that insurance rate drop, the premium. I wish I had some data to share with you, but just bringing one class down from like a 4 to a 3 could be upwards of about an 8% savings on your homeowner's insurance. So I just kind of wanted to share that with you, thinking of long-term cost. If you're looking at budget, that would really save taxpayers some money on their premiums for insurance as well. Any questions for me on any of this?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes, please.
yeah.
What is our ISO rating for Plaistow?
Last time you were at a 4, which is a good rating. If you get down to a 3, that could save you.
Now, where do we stand in the state? Are we in the middle? Are we,
The scores are from 1 to 10, 1 being a perfect score, 10 being a high score.
I understand that.
Okay.
But where do we stand in the state? I mean, we have something like 300 towns. Where are we? Are we in the middle? Are we?
Right.
I mean, we
A score
must-
of 4 for this size of town is a good score. Surrounding towns, Sandown, Kingston, might be at 8 or a 9. So you can see where your
So
score,
we look pretty good.
right.
And that was my
Room
understanding.
for improvement.
Right. This is my 5th year on the Budget Committee. And this is a question that we've asked over the years. And we have usually been within the first 25 to 30 in the state, which is outstanding.
Correct. No, it's a very good score. That's what I was saying, is 4 is a great score.
So what you're saying is we should be better?
There's room for improvement, definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Pete, and then.
Yes. If we went to the overnight on-call, would it guarantee us to go down in the rating?
I don't know about guarantee. That's up to the insurance services offices to do that. But that would definitely help. If you look at just training and staffing are 2 big ones.
But it wouldn't guarantee it going down to 3?
I can't guarantee it, no. You'd have to
Okay.
talk to them. That's definitely something they look at. It's the insurance offices. So staffing, training are 2 big ones. And also water access is the other one. So as far as fire hydrants and how close the proximity is to the homes.
Did you have one?
No, I think he just answered the question. My question was, so you're saying that by putting 2 firefighters on overnight versus on call, has the potential to lower our ISO rating?
Yes, so that's because they're on staff and
Right.
more readily available
I
to
hear.
get to the emergency, correct?
Yes, Lauren?
Is that ISO rating, is that to do with like residents versus commercial and industrial? Is that factored into?
It's a town class, so basically they look at the town and then, again, they'll go through the number of firefighters available at certain times. They'll look at that. Again, Chris, you can help me out with this one. Yeah, John.
I was the interim chief last
Yeah.
year,
Yes.
and in the fall, something happened within the insurance industry. A lot of wrong numbers were given out to homeowners, and the town hall started taking in a lot of complaints from homeowners because they were being told by their insurance companies that they were a 9 instead of a 4. Their rates were drastically going up, and they were all wondering what was going on. So I had to do some digging. I wasn't really sure where to start, but I ended up, there's a hotline at the ISO national office that only fire chiefs can call into. So I called into that, and I got a representative on the phone. And it was a nationwide glitch that somehow went into play, and all these insurance companies were getting the wrong numbers, passing them on to the homeowners, and their bills were going up a ton. So as you can see, that 4 from a 9, I'm not sure, the people never said what their bills went up to, but it was dramatic. There was a lot of people that were really worried about, paying their homeowners insurance. So it took a little bit of work, but, no, we were a 4 the whole time, so
Yeah.
they had to get their bills all redone. So maybe that'll help you out a little bit, seeing, going from 4 back down was a really large increase in the average homeowner's bill. So that was a little
is.
bit that I can give you that happened last year when I was filling in as chief.
So back to your question on,
Thank you.
Yeah,
okay, our ISO score is a 4 and it's for everybody. So if you own a business, you have to have, if you have insurance on your business, they're gonna rate
Okay.
the town class 4.
Yeah, I
for
just
your
didn't
insurance
know if
premium.
it was, different
I have a
for-
quick question for you before you're done.
yeah.
As far as a homeowner, let's say your house is worth $350,000 and you're purchasing homeowner's insurance from you, what would the difference be between the policy for if we were a 4 rating versus a policy if we were a 3 rating?
There's many factors that go in that, but the town class does affect your rate, and that can be anywhere from 4 to 8% difference on your
Okay.
premium, so. They'd also look at other factors, but with just the town class change, that would definitely come down.
Okay. Any other questions?
Any questions for me?
Thank you.
All good?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, guys, appreciate it.
Thank you.
So what else is important to talk about? as long-term impact on people that's had a fire loss. And if you don't mind sharing, they're working through probably an increase in your premium because you had a claim.
It's up for you. I know, last year, to be honest, I think my policy was all right, now it's up to 14.
So here you got a taxpayer that's going to be paying extra money.
We're still in the middle of the rebuild, so it hasn't finalized anything yet. Unfortunately, it's been 7 months. It's probably going to be another 3 months before we can decide that.
And that wasn't that significant of a claim. You know, you talk to somebody else, and the other example that I was going to bring tonight had a very large fire loss, and they're having a hard time getting insurance. So you talk about the long-term impacts, the costs, that's what it's going to cost the taxpayers that wish we got there a little bit quicker. The other issue with ISO is where we stand right now and with our budgets, what it's supporting, there's a good chance that our ISO might go from a 4 to a 5. So it moves both directions. So you got to be ready to answer that if we don't have the people coming in for the calls, we're not getting there in a timely fashion, we're not meeting our training requirements, our number could go up to a 5, which now would increase your insurance premiums. So it does move both directions, even though there's not a guarantee. As a decision maker, we want to make sure we understand that. So I'm going to share a quick story with you on savings. I come from a department that was a 100% volunteer fire department. Most people don't realize that. I didn't come from a full career department. We slowly grew over the years and made changes. And when I left, it's a combination department. When we were a volunteer fire department, we strive to get out the door as quick as we can, but just like it everywhere in the nation, there's delays. And we were delayed a house fire one cool April morning. We were delayed about 12 minutes getting a fire truck out. The call came out. There's a house on fire with 2 kids trapped. There was no reason for people to take their time. We got there as quick as we possibly could. While we were responding to the call, the police department was on scene giving a report. And if we could have got there within 2 or 3 minutes, we could have made a significant difference. Instead, I pulled out a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old that burned alive in this fire. Okay, time matters. Okay, that's the savings of having people at the fire station. It's human life, it's property damage, and it's long-term emotional and financial stress that our customers go through. I felt it was important to bring them in tonight because our budget's not just about numbers on paper. It's about the people that we impact in the community and the service that we provide them.
Can I stop in here for a second, Chief? I don't like the direction you're going. I don't think it's fair. I don't like hearing you pulling burned kids out of a house. There's no question in anyone's mind here about the safety and the job you guys do. There's none. It's why Plaistow and why now. You can line up people here to the end of the street who have stories about the police and fire department have done wonderful things for them. We're trying to justify putting the burden on the taxpayer of another $200,000 a year. That's what we're trying to get done here.
And I'm going to talk about those individually because the $200,000 is not just for staffing. Okay, there's a bunch of other things in the budget that could affect our SO score as well. Okay, so this is the reality. You know, and I'm sorry if I've rubbed you the wrong way, but this is what we see when we go on calls. There's a humanistic side to what we do. All right, we see people suffering. We see people lose belongings. We see people lose things that they can never replace. All right, we see that when we have a deficiency with something, what can we do to fix that? And that's what I'm doing here tonight, is pleading with you all and the taxpayers to make sure you understand what we see to help maybe make things better. All right, maybe it's not the right year. Well, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure the people that are the decision makers understand the decisions that they're making and how it impacts people. What is the schedule of the full-time firefighter? Right now, we work from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. There's 4 of them. They work 3 days on, and they're off for 3 days, and they rotate. So we only have 2 people on duty from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. There's nobody on duty after 6 in the afternoon, once this grant runs out December 31st. Okay. Since being staffed at night, how many calls came in between 6 PM and 6 AM? So we looked at from March 22nd to November 14th. That's when the grant started. 237 days, 215 calls. 35% of those calls of service were after 6 o'clock at night. Okay, so we do run a significant amount of calls after the staff goes home. How many calls between 6 PM and 6 AM did on-duty solely respond to without having to wait? Those 215 calls, 100%, they're not waiting for people to come in. Their job is to immediately get on whatever appropriate apparatus it is and respond to the call. 161 of those calls are handled without calling people in. So that's 75% of those calls, we're not calling people in, and we're not delaying a response. We're immediately responding to the call. Which apparatus can leave the station with just 2 overnight on-duty personnel? All of them. Okay, one thing that we've just recently improved on is we were short on drivers. We just finished a class that now we have 12 new drivers that are well capable of responding to the apparatus. So the people that are working at night, they're checked off to drive an engine, they're checked off to drive the rescue, they're checked off to drive the forestry, the tanker. We have some limitations still on the ladder truck, but that's not the first piece we take out the door. So that's really not delaying anything because it wouldn't go first anyway. On a late night call, what is the difference in time it takes to leave the station between personnel who sleep at the station compared to personnel that sleep at home? Before 24-hour staffing, it took an average of 10 minutes to respond in apparatus. And that's going through several run cards. I got Deputy Judson here to help if he wants to share with that. He kind of brought that to my attention when I first came to the department, and I was assessing the department, reaching out to the people there and the command staff to see what needed to be improved on, and this was something that he thought was pretty significant. Is there anything you want to add to that, or?
Yeah, when I took over last year as interim chief, the town manager asked any issues that I saw right away. That was in January of 2019, and that was something that popped right up that worried me, is the amount of time at night it was taking us to get to somebody's house. And in my opinion, it was totally unacceptable, and we tried a few things to improve it, and improved it a little bit, but it wasn't really enough. So the average now is dropped down dramatically by having those 2 people at the station versus having somebody drive from their house to the station, get their gear, get in the truck, leave the station, drive to the scene. So it's a dramatic increase in the time savings that we're seeing now with the 2 people at the station.
With the 24-hour staffing, but when we receive the call and arrive on scene, it's an average of 5 minutes and 38 seconds. All right, so it was taking 10 minutes just to get a fire truck out the door. Now we're making the scene with a fire truck in 5 minutes and 38 seconds.
And looking at that number too, that I gave a calendar to the selectmen last year of 2 years worth of nighttime calls, so they could actually, they had a hard copy, and it varied. There were some really long response times, and then there was other ones that would drop the average down. So that number 10 is the average. There was 12s, 14s mixed in there that, in my eye, was 100% unacceptable to have for somebody waiting that long for any type of help that we would need to give them. Whether they be laying on the floor and just need to be picked up, an elderly person, or their house was on fire at the other end of the extreme. I just felt that having somebody waiting that long for help needed to be improved on. So we tried some steps during the summer, and in the fall, I think that the selectmen had gotten a number and they were ready to vote on it. I actually had them held off, because that would have been for this year's budget, to appropriate the money to cover those 2 positions. And I said, you know what, I'm just an interim, I'm filling the spot, I'm not sure what the new person is gonna wanna do, so I had them hold off at that point last year. I don't remember which month I was in there with them. I know
Quick question. How many fires do we have in town? How many actual house fires do we have?
Trying to remember.
I'd have to dig into the computer. Most of our calls are emergency medical service
Right.
calls. So,
Right, that's why most of you are
The EMTs, yes.
yeah.
correct.
I want to think last year when we ran a report, we ran 11. Okay, we've ran probably 6 or so this year. Most of those are, we're getting there quick, so they're small. You don't see them. You don't see them on the paper and the
And
news.
those are houses, not commercial.
Right. Yeah, so I don't think we've had any commercial incidents this year.
No, I'd have to think back pretty far.
Not any fire-wise. We go there in alarm activations, but not on the fire-wise.
Thank you.
So the problem is not the group. We have an excellent group of on-call firefighters, and that's why we want to continue utilizing them. They're the core, the heart of the organization. The problem is where they live. You know, years ago, everybody from the history that I got used to live close to the fire station. Well, over time, people have moved out from the fire station. So I put on a map here, this is where our members live in town. So we do get a good response, it's just delayed because of having to drive to the station. So this is why, you know, if we could fix that and get the first truck out, we have no doubt that we're gonna get a second, third, and fourth truck out pretty quick afterwards. It's just getting that first one there as fast as we can.
If I could interject for a minute, I've been here in 2 years, I have 40 years on the department, so I started back when we were in the building down the street, and that was the early 80s, and back then, there was enough people that could walk to this building to get on the fire truck and respond, so, you know, there was 5 or 6 core people that lived right here, you know, in this exact neighborhood, so as you can see by the map now, like you said, everything's spread out, so it's totally different.
So we still got a strong roster, we still got a good core group. It's just the fact of where they're living and where they're having to respond from if they're home to get to the station. Does having personnel in-house during the overnight reduce the number of on-call personnel that respond when a call comes in? No, absolutely not. We're not trying to get rid of any of the on-call people. The call firefighters are the heart of this community. It's the heart of this department. And that's why we're utilizing them more than we ever have before.
One thing too to interject, I'm not sure if that's out there, but our call guys are the ones that are filling these overnight shifts. Calendar gets put out, like right now for the month of December. They select which nights they're available and want to work, and then there's a deputy chief that does all the scheduling, so they're all assigned the shifts for the month of December. So all those shifts that we're covering right now with the grant are our people. They're all our call people filling in those shifts.
Do any of our neighboring New Hampshire towns have daytime staff fire stations? Yes. So you look at Kingston. Kingston has 2 people on 24 hours a day. They have a full-time chief and a full-time secretary EMT that supplement that. So actually during the week, during the day, they have 4 people on duty. They always have 2 people on duty 24 hours a day, and they run about 1,100 calls a year. That's what our average is as well. So we'll run about 1,180 calls a year with that. So that's the first one that I'm going to show as a sample. The next one is Hampstead. Hampstead has changed over to 24-hour staffing as well with 2 people. They have 1 full-time person that works, and they have 1 per diem person that works 24 hours a day. They have a full-time captain that works during the week that gives them a 3rd person. If that captain's off duty, they fill that 3rd spot with a per diem. Again, they run around, 1,100 calls, 1,088 calls a year as well.
Go ahead.
Quick question. What is their budgets compared to yours?
That's, the dynamics are different. The risk that their community faces is different than our risk that we face.
But
The
you're
apparatus, the
you're
number-
comparing people that have on-call people, and you're comparing us to them for their on time and everything else. You need to tell me what their budget is versus the budget you're going after right now.
So I don't know the makeup, their fire trucks are different, their building maintenance is different.
I think that's something, before you go too far on these slides, you should know that dynamic.
So
before
that
we-
dynamic would be their hourly pay, probably.
What I'm saying is their overall fire department budget may be half of what yours is. If it's half of yours, then it's easy to justify 2 more people, because the dollars aren't there.
But then the other comparative would be what's their tax base? How many residents do they have?
I agree.
Because
but-
that would offset what's their tax rate.
Right.
I have a question too.
Go ahead.
Excuse me, Chief. Right now, you're speaking of daytime staff.
No, I'm gonna get the daytime, so.
Well, that's what the slide says now.
They said
Daytime.
daytime, but there's a couple departments that just have daytime people as well.
So
But
which-
these,
So what towns have daytime and what have nighttime?
so Newton has daytime staff. They have Monday through Friday with 2 per diem, and then their chief works 30 hours a week. They only run about 400 calls a year. So the trend that you see is when you're only running about 400, 500, 600 calls a year, they have daytime people to supplement that. When they start getting busier or they have lacks of response time, these towns are changing over. So Hampstead, I think was the last time that this changed over this last year. They're seeing the same thing that we're seeing. What's happening here is a national problem with getting fire trucks out in a timely fashion. It's not just Plaistow, it's everywhere. So the trend to see that is trying to supplement that with part-time or per diem staff, people at the fire station to try to get that gap closed. So kind of moving to the end of the questions and now getting into the budget itself, because there's, I think, a misunderstanding that $200,000 is not going to just to pay for the personnel. There's other issues that we want to try to address to make better, to make sure the ISO score either improves, stays the same, but definitely doesn't go backwards to a 5. So the big thing here, permanent positions, this is the increase that you typically see with cost of living raises and such. We are making a couple little other minor adjustments with that if this passes. But what I thought was important was with the help of Greg Colby. We looked at what a $400,000 residence would pay on taxes so people understand the impact. I did that early on. I wanted to see what the impact is because I'm a taxpayer here too. So if we're going to ask for a change, what does that change do to the tax bill? So the estimates that you're seeing here is on a $400,000 piece of property or estimated tax bill. So our cost of living, with a couple little changes, we're looking at about 40 cents a month for that one. So out of that 200,000 that you talk about, 13,734 is within that raise as well. If you look at, I'm gonna go back here. If you look at that, I've combined a couple budget lines to try to clean that up a little bit. The budget's quite busy. I'm trying to simplify that a little bit for record keeping. So we've combined our full-time firefighters, which is the two shift officers to the 2 driver firefighters, and my salary as well. I was all grouped together and just having one full-time line for salaries.
Chief, can I just bring something up? Because I'm looking at that line with the budget that we have printed out. And it shows that the 2020 fire department permanent positions was $80,000.
That is just that's my salary.
Oh, okay.
So if you look at line 2110, a little bit further down, that was budgeted at $211,203.
So you're adding the 80.
So I'm
and you're
adding both of those together, yes.
Chief, this estimated that you have here, I'm a little bit confused. Does that include insurance and retirement, that 40 cents a month that you have there?
That doesn't go through our budget. That goes, I think, through human resource.
Pardon me?
That goes through the human resource budget. That's not in our budget.
Okay.
Yeah. So you would have seen that, I think, already reflect on.
So 40 cents a month is just the fire department?
Just the fire, but what we're asking for is an increase for our staffing, or for our full-time positions.
So there would be another addition in the human resources?
Correct.
Should be, yes.
Okay.
Yes. So uniform line, again, I've combined a couple lines. We had several different lines that really goes to uniforms. That's 291 and line 2741. In 2020, those lines were $22,280. I've asked an increase of $14,670. Part of that is for our daily shift uniforms. We've never really had a strong budget to replace stuff. I got people that are wearing duty boots that are 14 years old. All right, so we're trying to, it's just a mixed match of replacing duty uniforms that need to be replaced. The other part of that is our structural fire gear that we wear when we go into burning buildings and automobile collisions. The price of that goes up every year. What we were buying, you can no longer get. Okay, they quit making it. We're kind of like in the middle of the road on protection. And so that caused a little bit of an increase as well. We wanted to get, I think we put in one more set than we normally get on top of that because there's an expiration date on those. They don't last forever. They last 10 years. So we got to kind of stay a little bit ahead of the curve on that. So we asked for, I think it was one additional set than what we normally get. So again, out of that 200,000, 14,670 is within that for here, and again, impacting our taxpayers by 43 cents a month. Fit for duty medical physicals. Okay, we've never budgeted this for this. This was only done when we would take a member on. So this is for the entire department. It's a required baseline and annual physical, which is outlined in NFPA 1582, and it's also outlined in an OSHA standard. It's to make sure we're healthy to fight fire. And again, to look for things, it's not a cancer screening by no means, but part of that has to do with the cancer presumptive risk and cancer presumption that New Hampshire has for their firefighters. We should be giving them annual physicals. So that's a $15,600 increase, or 46 cents a month for that increase as well. We have some dues and memberships that we're part of. This is nothing really new. They do go up every year, so it's hard for us to maintain a level funded budget because they have increases in the things as well. So the Seacoast Fire Chiefs, the CLIA Laboratory, Firemen's Association, the hazmat membership, all those are in there. The only thing that is new is we should be utilizing a pre-incident planning software to help us when we're handling calls and commercial occupancies. We don't currently have that right now. So there's a little bit of increase with that as well in there. So $3,730 increase in that line. And again, that's 10 cents a month to the taxpayer. Books and periodicals, the National Fire Code. So this is fire prevention material that we hand out at the schools. Again, the cost of those items go up over time. And the National Fire Codes, we have to use a subscription service now for our fire codes. They no longer print booklets. So we pretty much don't have a choice other than to move over to the online platform, which doesn't cost a whole lot more, but combined together, those, you know, we had a $385 increase on that line, which is a penny a month. All right, so here's the money show here. This is what you all kind of been looking at. What's it cost to have the night staffing? So for one, I've combined several budgets, several line items to put all the call firefighters under one salary. If they're getting paid, it should come out of a salary line. So this increase is for calls of service when they come back for any call, for the per diem coverage that we're asking for at night, for the officer coverage that we need at night, for the administrative duties that we already have in the budget, and an increase in our training payroll. So we could improve the services to our town, to our customers, as well as make sure that we're lowering or doing everything we can to try to get our ISO score to lower down. So that lump sum of money is a $113,952 increase. All right, so to have the night staffing, we're looking at $3.32 a month on average for a $400,000 taxpayer. Full-time, so this is the overtime line, okay, so full-time for overtime. We've underfunded that for the last couple of years. We typically seem to see that's overspent. Part of that's calls for service. It's hard to estimate how many calls that we're gonna have, and when our full-time staff comes in, obviously they're getting paid overtime for that. They have an earned time off liability that we have to address, meaning that this is their vacation time that they have to take off every year. So we have a combined hours of 400 hours that have to have coverage. A lot of times that coverage is during the week, obviously, and it's hard to find a call member to come and work, or it's hard to find someone that's qualified to fill that specific position. So we have to include that in that liability for overtime. There's a little bit of money in there for per diem coverage at night. So for the most part, the call personnel are carrying the weight of overnight staffing. But every once in a while, we have gaps that we have to fill where we couldn't find a call person to fill that gap. So the full-time is covering that as well. Officer coverage, and then some increased training payroll. We really need to increase our training. Right now, we're only budgeting about 6 hours a month And that's not even half of really what we should be doing. So you'll see there's an increase in that for training. The majority of their training is going to be done while they're on duty, but there's going to be times they'll have to come in as a group for the rest of the department, so there's some overtime included in that. So that line right there, I'm asking for a $37,813 increase, which is about $1.10 a month for the taxpayer. Our equipment, just like anything else, has been aging over the years, or it's been already aged, and maybe we required it from another department, and then it's continued to age with us. Or there's some items that we're missing that would really improve our capabilities if we could purchase them. So this is what this line is about. It includes technical rescue equipment, fire hose, nozzles, appliances, hand tools, flashlights, some piston intake valves, and patient immobilization. So this has got a significant increase of $21,000. Some of those items are pretty expensive, so it seems like it's a big increase, but when you really start putting the pencil to what you're buying, you don't get a lot for your money. The other issue we have with the equipment is, just like with anything, you have a cost of living, right? We have a cost of living. That's why we get a cost of living raise. If we flatline this line item, the stuff that we buy goes up every year, just like everything else. So as we start doing that year after year after year, we actually decrease what we're allowed to buy year after year, because what we're buying costs more money than it did 2 years ago. So there's a little bit of an increase figured in for that as well. So that increase is going to impact the taxpayer 61 cents a month. General medical supplies, for the last couple of years, we've overspent that line, so I'm just trying to get that lined up with responsible funding or responsible budgeting. We can't control this. This is medical supplies that we have to be able to run the calls. And again, over the years, those supplies costs go up. So if we don't keep up with that trend, now we're buying less and potentially have a shortage in equipment that we need. So we're asking for a $2,000 increase there, which is 6 cents per month. So the whole thing together, and you've seen this slide before, the whole thing together is, again, I wanted to see what this would impact the taxpayers. About 19 cents a day, or $6.49 a month, to greatly improve our capabilities and to get there a lot faster than what we're used to getting there for. If you look at our overall budget, and I've asked this question, and maybe you all could help me answer it, when was the last time the fire department had an increase in budget other than a little bit in payroll? I've not been able to find it for a couple of years. I don't know if you all could help me with that.
I just have up till 2017 in this. I can't look at the record.
Yes, I've tried to do a little historic, and ask, and it seems like it's been level funded for a number of years. So that's my last slide. I'm sure you all have a lot of questions, or maybe you don't. I'll be glad to answer them the best that I can.
Darrell has a question.
Chief, I don't think, I have a million little questions, but I'll cut to the chase on this. I don't think anybody feels as though you're not deserving of more, okay? It's a service that we all use, we appreciate. I think this is a terrible year to ask for more. We have a lot of people unemployed with the COVID. We have money that we know we're not going to see this year because rooms and meals taxes are down, gasoline taxes gone. Normally this year, I'd be looking for people to cut their budget, not come in with an expanded budget. I feel as though, from my standpoint, I would ask that we hope that next year will be a better year, that you could level fund your budget. And next year we'll relook at everything when things are a little bit merrier and a little bit better. But I have a tough time this year knowing how tough it is for people out there and how tough it's going to get, more than likely, before we're all inoculated and things get better.
And I'm going to turn to make sure I'm getting the mic, so I'm not.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
So that was a concern that we have as well, okay? But with that, that affects us too. So for example, we're going on a high-risk call now with the COVID, so it's safer to have people at the station. That's the whole reason why we moved to this model this last year. The previous model is you'd go to the call, or go to the station, go to the call, and then you're going right back home to your family. And that could be a little bit dangerous and cross-contamination. The other concern that we have run into, now luckily, I'm gonna knock on wood, that I don't jinx us, but other departments have been greatly impacted by quarantines. So you get 4 or 5 people that have to quarantine, firefighters have to quarantine. Now that greatly reduces the number of call people that could come back in on a call. So I do appreciate your concern, and I'm sympathetic to that as well, but I'm also, this is like a double-edged sword. You know, if we don't plan for it, something can happen. If we do plan for it, we could impact the taxpayer. And it's gonna be a tough decision. As a department head, that the decision, I think, is, you know, me showing you all what it is, and, you know, the stakeholders making that decision collectively.
I'd just like to mention that it's not true that you've had a level-funded budget for the last 5 years. I've been on the Budget Committee 5 years, and each year, prior to this current year, there has been a steady increase of approximately $40,000 a year.
Was that payroll or everything?
Overall budget.
Overall budget?
Yes.
Okay.
The-
Yeah, I had a question. So, one thing, I see they're extending the water line. So I see a lot of new hydrants and everything else going, I understand all that. And maybe this would have been a call for, a question for the insurance, but doesn't that also lower the ISO rating for our town? I mean, I know years ago when you had to drive for quite a distance, or you were at the station filling up trucks and shuttling, I notice now that we have hydrants.
So,
Wouldn't that severely, or wouldn't that impact the ISO? You're saying we could go up
so let
to
me.
5.
Yes, hydrants, water supply does affect part of that, and if you give me just a second, I can tell you how much. It's a percentage of the overall score, and if you live close to the fire hydrant.
It's broken down into a bunch of groups: apparatus, personnel, dispatch, water supply. So each one is a different percentage, so the hydrants increasing is gonna get a better score in that section.
Right.
So it takes a bunch of sections getting better to give a bottom line.
So the overall percentage of water supply is 40%. Okay, so when you look at what did we get now with the score that we have now, we hit almost 100% in water supply. So I don't see a drastic change with them putting in more hydrants, that changing. You know, when I'm looking at our ISO report.
Yeah,
So
no,
for credit for the system, we got 30 out of 30. For credit for hydrants, we got 3 out of 3. And for credit for inspection and flow testing is where we really need to improve at. We got 2.4 out of 7.
That's good.
So them putting in more hydrants is not going to, I don't think it's going to impact making the score better much, because we've already kind of maxed out in that area.
Okay, I was just curious if that helped.
A couple of friends of mine now that have a hydrant, new hydrant near their house, they said it's gonna be worthwhile you calling your insurance company and say, yeah, I'm within 500 feet of the fire hydrant now, this is brand new, is this gonna help? So it's worth a phone call to your agents and tell them if you do have the hydrants near your house now, and see what they say.
So we do have a split.
It's under 500 feet, you'll get a discount on your insurance.
Yeah. So it could affect the individual
Right.
payer, but not the town score overall.
Yeah, I was just curious if that was gonna, I know you had mentioned it could go up to 5. I didn't know if that would help keep us at 4.
Anybody that lives in the Sweet Hill area is definitely worth a phone call to their homeowner's insurance to find out if it's gonna help them. There's gonna be a lot of houses up there that
I see that.
I have a question. I did some quick math based on the numbers you put here. So as far as personnel goes, it looks like it would be a $187,952 increase just for staffing. And my question was, I don't have last year's budget worksheet, but I remember the town manager had recommended a $187,000 increase to the the budget, and the BOS decided against it because you came before the board
Yeah, that
and
was
said.
me.
Yeah,
I
so-
didn't see the whole, what that encompassed, so I wasn't really sure. They kind of did that on their own and said, you know, we've heard what you said, and okay, this is the number that we have, so I can't go backwards and say, okay, we're gonna break it down to this, and this, and this. It was just the one number.
I guess my question is, there wasn't a pressing need for those staffing increases then, so what has changed now?
There was.
There
but
was.
Being the fill-in guy, I didn't want to be the one to say, let's do it, and
Mm-hmm.
then have the new chief come on and want to do something different. I was just kind of holding the position for that year. So I'm the one that brought up that, hey, we need to do something different to help out at night. And I
Mm-hmm.
presented that to them, so they knew now going into this year that, you know, they'd be seeing some type of number to do the staffing that we have in place right now.
Okay, I know Pete and then Bob had something to say.
Chief, if we went to the full-time staffing, how many more people would we have to hire?
Full-time staffing?
Well, the 6 PM to 6 AM.
It would be none, it's
No,
our
yeah,
guys that we have right now.
We're not hiring any
The same-
full-time people.
No, you wouldn't be hiring any?
No, this is payroll to pay our on-call people.
Okay.
So there's a per diem rate, which within that change, I'm trying to change that just a little bit because right now we got people at 2 pay rates. Which doesn't make much sense when it's within a dollar range if they just stayed with their hourly rate. So it's to pay our on-call people to come in and fill, just like we've been doing this last year. So,
Right now, the grant is paying for that, so like I said, the guys all get a calendar a month advance, all the
Yep.
call guys. So they pick out their days, and then that fills up the next month's night coverage.
so,
Just one other thing, the tower truck, did we purchase that new?
That was used, I was involved in that years ago, that purchase.
Okay.
I'm actually the one that found
Are
it.
we,
on
are we
Long
still looking to purchase a used one or a
Island.
new
Haven't
one?
really come down to that yet. That one was 250,000
Yep.
when we bought it years ago, which was a really good deal, so we got an excellent deal on that.
Yeah.
But we've got our money's worth and then some out of it,
Okay.
so that's how that played out.
Bob, did you have another question, or?
Yeah, I did. So with the 2 firefighters that we have on during the night, you're saying that would have shortened an 11-minute call if we had 2 full-time firefighters?
they would have
on?
been out the door in 2 minutes or less.
Okay, so,
And they drove 1.5 miles, so another minute to drive, so 3 to 4 minutes.
so what, if you don't mind me asking, what piece of apparatus would have been the one that first out the door? What's your first one out the door?
Most of the time, they're taking engine 8
Okay.
out the door.
And,
Yeah.
and so any fireman that is either passing the scene or whatever has his gear with him, would they go directly to the scene to
So
help?
they don't have all their gears at the
They
station.
don't have all the, okay, because the reason I'm asking is 2 guys on 1 truck, and I know anything at a scene early is a good,
Well, I
yes.
can help you out a little bit. Bob and I were in the department in the 80s together. So what
Okay.
we're doing now is the 2 guys leave the station with the truck and say, I'm the call officer at night responding from my house. I have the other command vehicle. We meet up at the scene, form a 3-person crew.
Okay,
And I'm a driver, so more than likely the nights I'm the duty officer, I'm gonna be running the pump while those 2 are stretching the line into the house.
okay,
So-
yeah.
Meet up at the scene.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's important for everybody to hear. So we're asking for 2 people to be paid at the station, all right? There was funding in there, if you remember, I talked about for the officer. So we're sending an officer home with a command vehicle. We pay him for 1 hour, and we give him a stipend, a small stipend. Then we only pay them if they run calls. So we're using that to save money. So we've tried to develop a system that could fix the need that we have, but we're not overstretching the burden onto the taxpayers by, by effectively using our personnel.
Yeah, that was my question, was
So-
if a truck shows up at a scene,
We wanted to make sure, a lot of the nights, the 2 people going out are 2 of our newer people, so we wanted to make sure there was a supervisor there with them.
Absolutely.
In case some decision had to be made,
Yep.
we had a supervisor there on scene with them, so that's why that was put
That's
into
good.
play. And that's coming into effect now with the 3rd person on a fire call,
Right.
being able to run the pump.
Darrell, did you have a question?
The budgeting you put in here for 2 full-time people, they would be people that already exist within the department.
So, well, no, we've asked for 2 paid per diem positions. So it's not full-time, we're not looking to hire 2 people, we're looking to fund a spot of time that's gonna be filled with 27 people, or call members.
Right, but what I'm saying is, I'm looking at that funding. You're already paying somebody, so is there a credit back on the amount of money for what you're paying them now versus what they'll be getting? So that that number doesn't, in other words, if you're just looking at that as a flat number for 2 people to be on, if those 2 people happen to be within the department now, they're getting X amount of dollars. So that could be a credit back to the budget.
Those people are only getting paid when they show up. Those are all our call people.
I get that, but what, you're not getting what I'm saying. Is you're paying those people,
He can't hear the lieutenant.
The microphone?
Can you just make sure you're in the mic? Yep.
you're paying people now, okay, on the night, okay? From whatever it is, 6 to 6, okay? They're per diem, okay? That per diem, if they became full-time, would go away. So that money that you pay in a course of a year per diem would offset some of the full-time pricing.
For this year,
Yeah, I
Forget
get what
about,
you're saying, but
forget
then
about
you
this
have
year, forget about starting a brand-new year, okay?
You have to have the roll-ups in now. Can you speak into the microphone?
Can you speak into the microphone?
So you'd have to add to that spot all the healthcare, which would dramatically increase
Oh,
it. So
and I get it, but
We're
there
just
is,
paying the guy an
there
hourly
is some
rate.
money back. That's
So
what I'm saying.
That's, yes, I get what you're saying. That's why this is not a $200,000 increase, or really, it's way less than that, because what we were paying before for calls and events for our on-call staff,
Right.
what we budgeted before is $206,603. I've dropped that number down to 40,000. Because they're not coming back. You know, when you look at what they're coming back on, they're only coming back about 25% of the calls. So the good thing about getting this grant this year is we were able to get a good snapshot of where the budget number should be. So I was able to take that number and bring it down and plug it in to the per diem staffing, so that number is not as high as.
Okay,
that's
so
that credit you're talking
you've
about.
done that offset.
I've already done that.
Okay.
Correct. Yes.
I have a question about the training. It was under my impression that Monday nights, the fire department had training for 2 to 3 hours. Mostly 2, sometimes it went longer. That was my impression, so that would be 8 hours at least a month. And also on Wednesday nights, there was training for
EMT training, two Wednesday
right.
nights a month, yep.
Right. So that's certainly, and that's every other week? Is it?
We don't do the 2 Wednesday nights anymore. It was people were spending too much time away from
Okay,
home.
so
and
that's
they
what
couldn't-
has been eliminated? Is,
Yeah,
I'm
at the
trying to
end-
figure out how we get to 6.
So, okay, so I could tell you that, one Monday night a month was not training. It was an association meeting.
In a
Okay.
department meeting.
So that, there's no training that's going on there.
Okay, got it.
And so that's where the 6 came in. It was about 2 hours.
Right.
And looking at the overall budget, of what does the budget support, was only supporting about 6 hours on that side and a little bit of the EMS side of things.
And there's no EMT training anymore?
There is. What had happened, this goes back before COVID, so I'm going to go back to 2019 and then 18 even. So we got rid of the 2 Wednesday nights because people were saying, I can't do this anymore. So the first Monday night was a fire training, second Monday night was a fire training, third was the 2 meetings, and the fourth was an EMS training night. That was the last model that we had.
Okay.
So,
running.
So there's no more EMS training?
There is, and then there's not, you still have to do your hours of recertification.
Right.
The state has lowered now in the national level the hours that you have to do, so people were getting, every Monday night a month, and then they'd have to do a little bit of training on their own somewhere to meet the numbers of required hours to be an EMT.
Well, considering the fact that most of the calls are EMT calls that you have, EMT training is, in my opinion, pretty important.
I don't disagree with that.
So is that, what's in this budget is to increase that portion of the training?
It's increase the EMT training, technical rescue training, and fire training to meet NFPA standards, OSHA standards, and National Registry requirements for EMT school, or EMT certifications. So, and we've also changed the model that it's not all there. So we're trying to be more gentle with our on-call staff because we understand time management and time away from family. So they now have, within that budget for next year, it's in this year's, I got it on the grant, but next year we'll have to pay with that, is being able to do a lot of that online. So they're getting a combination of in-class delivery, they're getting a online structure, and then they're getting hands-on skills.
How do you feel about online training?
It's a small component. I'm not big on heavy online training, but there's a lot of small little things that we have to do every year that it's easier to do that online, let them do it at their leisure than make them come in, and then you're kind of wasting a night when you could have done a better structured training class.
Could I jump into, I told the chief I started to do my online training, and I'm a little bit older than a lot of the guys, and I found it beneficial for me. If I was sitting in a classroom with the other 20 people, you'd kind of lose focus a little bit, but if I'm online on the computer, I'm taking notes, because there's quizzes during the course, and then there's a test at the end you have to pass to get your certificate. So I feel personally, for me, I like better myself doing the online courses, because I'm directly focused on my PC, I'm taking my notes to study from, I'm doing a quiz, taking some more notes, then there's the test at the end that I'm going through all the notes that I've taken. So for me, I feel that I'm learning more that way than
Terrific.
sitting in a 3-hour lecture with the guy up in front of all 20 of us. Everybody else might be different, but for me, I like it that way.
Glad to hear that.
I have a couple of questions. You mentioned that you backed off on the EMT training because the staff was getting basically overworked, too much time away from home. So how does adding money to training make that better? If they're not coming in, it's not due to money, it's due to because of being...
So it's the breakup, and that was something when I first was assessing the department and talking with the guys, that I was getting feedback from them. You come in and you're there for 2 hours and then you're leaving. And it's like you're turning around and you're doing it again. So they would rather come longer, maybe not come as much, but then also have online, because we pay them to do the online training as well.
Less often, but more intense training?
More in person. So they seem to like that, and we're also offering classes on multiple nights. It's no longer just on Monday night. So what we're doing now is we'll offer the class on Monday and Thursday night, so it gives them an option of what night works best for them. So we're getting more involvement with the hands-on training as well.
I could add to that too. In years past, we'd start at 7 o'clock, we'd get all our equipment together, we'd roll out the door at 7:15, we'd show up at our training site at 7:30, get set up. Now it's 20 of 8. We do our training, now it's starting to get dark, we have to be back for 9, so at 8:45 we're quitting. So now we're expanding that time that we have to work with. We've been doing 4-hour blocks from 6 to 10. So we're on that training site now a lot longer, getting more accomplished than the 2-hour block.
And that block was restricted because of budget restrictions? That's why you couldn't train
No,
longer?
that's the way it was for years. Like I said, I've been here almost 40 years, and it was always 2 hours on Monday night. Every now and then there'd be a Saturday that we would run for, 6 hours here and there, but it was always the 2 hours of Monday night, and you always had that lead time of getting the guys on the trucks, getting the gear together, getting set up at the scene, and then having to get back.
So back to your question, the budget doesn't depict the start and end time, but the budget depicts how many hours you could do in a month. So,
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure how, if it was not due to not enough money for training, if you stated that it was because the guys were away from home for too long. So how does adding money to it make them want to do it more?
because we're offering more nights, so
Okay.
they don't have to come every Monday night, and then we're increasing it, so when they're there, they're getting more done.
Okay.
They're
So-
getting a choice now too. We're doing smaller groups. We're finding that it's easier to teach 8 people than it is 16 or 20. So they can pick Monday or Thursday night, there's groups of 8 or 9. So that way, if, you know. the
Additional
family-
funding makes it more, you can make it more flexible.
Yeah,
It makes it more flexible, oh, and it adds the time that they're actually doing. So they're actually coming more, but they're coming less, because they're not just there for 2 hours this week. They're there for 4 hours
You're
this
not
week.
breaking up every night.
Yeah,
yeah,
and they're
maybe if
breaking
your
it up.
kids have a sports night on Monday night, now they can do Thursday night, get the same class. It makes it a lot easier on the family situation, having, you know, a second
So-
choice for them.
And another example with that, there's some specific classes that we're supposed to be doing to, it's not just about, I hate to say it's not just about ISO, but they're the ones that come in and grade us, so I have to use it, but it's about knowledge. For a driver operator to drive and operate a fire truck, ISO requires an initial class at 60 hours on pump hydraulics and hydrology. So we've never been able to do that before. Part of that is because the state, and this has nothing to do with the previous chief, it's the makeup of the New Hampshire system is fragmented for on-call members. It's hard for them to take off 2 weeks and go to a class at the academy. It's just not possible. I was able to bring that skill set with my background to this department. So for an example, because of the grant funding I got this year, it helped offset some of our payroll issues, so I could do some more training with them. So we just graduated 12 people that now has gotten that 60-hour pump class. So that is going to impact huge on our next ISO score, because they're going to be able to get credit for that, which we've never been able to get credit before. The next thing is officer training. You know, we have very few officers that's actually had a structured officer class. That you're looking at about a 40-hour class. Again, my skill set that I've been able to bring, I could teach that. I don't have to, you know, again, the previous chief did some good things. He had his hands tied because those classes were not offered to the on-call firefighter at a time that they could take it. Well, now, like what I did with those 12 people in the pump classes, I put a list out. Who wants to take this class? You tell me your schedule. And then I took and I developed the schedule around the students to meet their needs so they could get that class that they need. We didn't have payroll to do that. So that's why I'm asking for more payroll. We got to keep doing stuff to make the department better, other than the 6 hours a month. And we don't have that payroll built in to be able to do those additional classes. They have them available because of my background now, that they've never had that ability before.
I had another question about back to the overnight. How do we compare with towns around us? What other towns have overnight staffing in, just regarding Haverhill?
Kingston and Hampstead was the two.
Yeah, those are the two that are closest to our calls. We run almost exactly the same calls, and they have exactly the same staffing, 2 people.
They have the overnight right now?
Yeah, in
Is it a COVID temporary overnight, or have they had it right along?
Had it.
Yeah.
Kingston actually just added a second person, so now they have it. And Hampstead does the exact same model we do. They have an officer at night, along with the 2 guys that responds to make the 3-person crew to stretch a whole.
They have people in the station, sleeping in the station.
Yeah, Hampstead and
Hampstead and
Kingston now each
Kingston.
have 2.
So, and something else to throw in all this in the decision-making process is, we're seeing a trend where we're transporting more people in our ambulance than we've ever had before. You know, I asked that question early on, and they said, oh, we only transport 4 or 5 times a year. And it seems like everybody's busier, you know, because a lot of it's because of COVID driven. You know, we went through a period where it was kind of slowed everything down, and now we're busier. So that's another good reason to have people there, is to be able to provide transport.
Yeah, I was under the impression we got away from that because it was taking away our rescue and when they were out delivering people to hospitals. I thought it was being left
Yeah,
to
the other
Trinity.
day, I worked a per diem shift the other day, so it was me and the 2 firefighters. Trinity had no ambulances, and we had a lady that was having difficulty breathing. We had to get her to the hospital. So this is our last resort. We had to use our 2 people in our truck and send them. So it was a weekend day. We did a recall, and we got 6 people back, I think, to cover just in case while those guys were gone. But at that point, our ambulance is gone with our 2 people for like an hour. And that was a weekend day that we got people back. A weekday,
Yeah.
we don't know who's around. It could be 3 people, it could be 1, it could be 0. So as Trinity starts getting busier and busier, you know, this is gonna occur more. All the towns are growing at the same time.
A couple of years ago, I recall eliminating a fund that was set up, you know, collect the fees for ambulance service. And it was designed to replace the rescue vehicle that we have when it became due to buy a new one.
Yeah, I can't,
Well,
comment on that. I think it became
Right.
such few times that we were transporting, it
Right.
probably
So
wasn't
that's how it
worthwhile.
turned, correct, that's how it turned out. Now, we're getting back into doing more of that. Are we collecting fees?
So initially, I asked that question, when I said, you know, if we transport, how do we collect? And collecting money on healthcare is quite complicated, if you couldn't imagine. So departments like our size, you use a third-party collection service because of all the rules and regulations you have, especially with Medicare and other insurance policies. So they used to, but because we were transporting, this was before I came in, before we were transporting so few calls a year, that third party dropped us because it wasn't worth doing, you know. So they went, you know, like you said, they eliminated that. Well, I'm seeing this trend where we're doing more and more, so I'm actually reaching out to some other third-party vendors to see what it would cost to start charging again, and I'm actually looking at implementing that in 2021. Because if it's 1 or 2 times a year, it's not worth it. But if we're transporting, you know, a couple times a month, then you really start getting into a funding model that you don't want to turn around from. So,
Well, an insurance company has no problem billing you for a $2,000 ambulance ride. Someone's got to be getting paid for it.
exactly.
You should be.
Right.
I've been transported twice, one was 1,500 and the other one was 2,400, so there's substantial money that's charged to the person for the transport.
So, and it's also my understanding, this is a good thing, in New Hampshire, from what I understand, there's a RSA or a law that requires insurance companies to pay the ambulance bill. So that does make things a lot better too. So,
Which brings to mind, when will we be replacing that emergency, that
so that's actually what I think was next on the CIP to replace. It's still in good shape, you know, so I'm kind of using a different, you know, when that CIP was put, again, things change over the years. You know, and you're trying to project way down what needs to be replaced. I'm not in a hurry to replace the rescue. You know, I think it was supposed to be this year or next year. I see other needs such as that ladder truck, so I'm gonna put that on pause and try to address the needs that we have immediately.
So this year is basically a warrant article for scuba gear, right?
I don't know if we'll ask for money to be collected this year. We have to ask for it to be
Withdrawn.
released.
Oh, okay, so you have enough for scuba gear?
Well, we're gonna, that's what, I'm working with the CIP just to make sure. I'm working with some different vendors to see what our needs are and what it's gonna cost. So right now, I could tell you, we're not looking to ask for money. We're just looking to ask for what's been captured to be released so we could buy the equipment that it was earmarked for.
Any other questions?
If you brought on a full-time firefighter, a new full-time firefighter position, do you have any idea what the cost would be between all the roll-ups and
Yes,
everything?
so for a basic entry, well, I'm gonna say EMT firefighter.
Yes,
I just looked at that. I wanna think it was 70,000 with all the roll-ups.
okay.
And that's 70,000 a person, plus overtime for when they're coming back on calls.
Yeah,
So you might as well say probably 82,000.
yeah.
Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like we're talking, the one that you transport with is the Rescue 2, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so according to the CIP, they have it pushed out to 2024.
We just did that, so I
Yeah.
met with Tim Moore a
Right,
couple weeks
right,
ago.
right.
And he updated the CIP because I didn't see that it was responsible spending
Right.
to replace that.
So if I'm not mistaken, it looks like the next piece coming would be they're talking the Tower 3,
Correct,
which is is that the used piece?
correct.
Okay, yeah, for 400,000, so yeah, that's, and if I'm not mistaken, it was spoken that the 400,000, even that was not gonna do it, considering the replacement of the vehicle is over, $1 million.
It all depends on that's a used market price.
Right, right.
We bought that one, like I said, for $250 used.
Right.
So I think we had guessed a couple years ago, how much is it gonna be at that year, so I think
Yeah.
we put 400 in there. And there's a lot of bargains out there that sell
Yeah.
quick, so it's a lot of looking on a used apparatus magazine to find a truck at the right price, so it's hit or miss.
Yeah,
That might be
So-
more than enough, and then it depends, maybe it's gonna be short, it's tough to say.
There's a couple factors that play into that. One is the height of our apparatus bay. It's a little short. So we're limited to ladder trucks out there to make sure it'll fit in the bay. So length is fine, but we don't have enough height. So that limits that. The other caution in purchasing used apparatus is you see they're expensive. If this town bought a $1.4 million ladder truck, when do you think we would want to get rid of it? Never, until it was not in good shape anymore, or it was costing an extensive amount of money in maintenance. So looking at used fire trucks could save you maybe on the front end, but now you're paying, like I said, we've already sunk, I want to think $70,000 into that ladder truck having to fix it over the last 5 years. So there's pros and cons of finding the right fit, need, and budget for fire apparatus.
Other questions? No? Yeah, Bob?
Radios. What is your plans on replacing radios?
So that's another, it's capital improvement that I'm talking with
Yeah,
Tim
this
Moore
is-
about. So he's got a couple different options I've not had a chance to look at. So what he's talking about is our portable radios that we're using right now are 16 years old. Okay? The one that I have issued to me has a hard time staying on sometimes. So it is kind of scary to think of, we have firefighters going in an environment that they might need that to call for help, and it's not working. So that's another thing on the capital improvement list, and he's looking at some different funding models for that, if it's a warrant article, if it's a bond, to try to speed that up, because I think right now we're only putting back $16,000 a year in the CIP.
I believe so.
Yeah, unfortunately, that only buys 2 radios. They're outrageously expensive.
So we're talking this coming election, having a warrant for something to take care of the radios?
I'm pushing to that because that's an important piece that we need to look at fixing.
Chief, in your presentation, you mentioned you were going to replace the scuba gear, the SCBA. It's my understanding that last year in the CIP, we had paid for 5 out of the 6 years of about $42,000 a year, and this last year we canceled that last payment for some reason. Where are you going to get the money from to do the replacement of that gear?
So I don't know why that was canceled. That happened right when I was coming on. I don't think that was really on our side of the table.
That involved me, but Greg and the town manager, I'd have to divert and ask them. That was in the gap year that I was filling in, that payment came up, and I can't remember why it was canceled. It did happen in 2019. And then Mr. Colby, I think, and the town manager.
So you still need that $42,000 to?
So when that was put in, obviously you're trying to do a cost analysis projection where it's going to be at the end of the term. I'm talking with a vendor right now that I'm hoping that we might have enough money without asking for any more to replace what we need to replace. So if we don't, then obviously we'd be asking for a warrant article. Either we'd be asking for a warrant article, throw off the difference, or there's another option is we do need to replace those air packs. Okay, they were purchased in 2007. Do we use all of them all the time? We don't use all of them all the time. So if I could at least get the ones on our frontline apparatus replaced and then save some of these old ones in reserve, we could make it another couple of years because those hardly ever get used for anything. So again, looking at some responsible purchasing and spending on those items as well.
Any other questions? No? Thank you so much for coming and catering this to our needs.
You're fine,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you. So, I'm there every day for the most part, so I welcome you all to stop by anytime if you want to come talk to me in person, tour the station.
Terrific.
I think that would be great. you all are, support what we have to do, so.
And in my first year on the budget committee, I was invited by the chief, both the fire and the police chief, and I took advantage of that, and another member did also. Very productive. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys very much.
So on the agenda, next I had discussed the following budgets, and I emailed our questions to the town manager and finance director, as well as the chair of the Board of Selectmen. And the only thing that I have in our folder is the Visions contract and the water budget. None of our questions were answered, so I'm not really sure how to proceed.
I'll ask the two Board of Selectmen. Do you know what's going on with that?
Depends on what your question is.
Well, the question is why weren't the questions answered?
Which ones?
I sent the chair of the Board of Selectmen,
Right.
the town manager, and the finance director, the list of the questions the committee emailed me. I think I CC'd you on the email. There was a list of questions regarding all of these individual department budgets, and none of our questions are answered for tonight.
And we are ready to answer them. Town manager speaking.
I think we need to get Dean up here, or,
Can you hear me? We can hear you, we can't see you.
Hold on.
So the answer to the question is, we received the email, and it says the Budget Committee will be reviewing the budgets on 11/17, and these are the questions the Budget Committee has submitted, and so we're prepared to answer those questions tonight.
okay, great. I didn't know you were going to be here. I didn't get any emails, so I had no idea.
Do you want me to start with the
Yeah,
executive?
Dean's.
Yeah,
I
Dean's
think
trying to get you
put
pulled
me
up.
on.
Well, if you can hear me.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, if you want to start with executive.
Just bear in mind, we don't have a list of the questions in front of us.
So I'll read it then.
Thank
So
you.
executive, line 4130, 3110, description includes scanning project. Could you detail what this project includes? The answer is that $17,000 is the amount for the scanning project. It involves one experienced records clerk at $18 an hour for 18 hours a week for 52 weeks a year. Is that the answer you were seeking, or is there more?
Yep.
Is that the money that was added at the deliberative session? For the records?
Go ahead. Someone else is going to answer this.
I think John Blinn got up and spoke at deliberative session about records. Is that what that was for?
I don't recall exactly, and I don't want to give you the wrong answer. If he did, he did.
Okay.
I got a question.
Yes, Darrell.
Is the position just temporary? It'll be done once the scanning is done?
Well, that's a complicated answer. I mean, the answer is yes, but what is done? What does done mean? Is done, there's a lot of records that need to be scanned. So it's a matter of what records are we going to scan, and what records aren't we going to scan. There certainly is priority on the land use records because under state law, we're required to keep those into perpetuity.
Right.
So if you know anything about how they're stored now, it's everything from behind you at the stage, underneath the stage, underneath desks, on the third floor, in the clock tower, in the basement, in the cells in the basement. The goal would take all of the land use records and have them all digitized so that they are more accessible to everybody, both the residents and everybody that seeks copies of the existing records related to all of the properties in the town. So say for instance that the project accomplishes that goal, we would then look to see the next priority.
So it almost becomes a full-time employee forever.
This is a part-time, per diem, per hour, no benefits, and the cap is 17,000 a year. It is not a full-time person.
So how are we taking and treating this person as a 1099?
No, it's an hourly person.
Okay, so you have to pay some benefits then? Whether-
Only the FICA and the mandatory contributions, no benefits.
No workman's comp?
Workman's comp is required by law for all employees, whether they're part-time, they work 1 hour a week, or they work 40 hours a week.
Does that $18 an hour include all of those benefits?
No.
Okay, what's the total number?
It would be a percentage, the mandatory contribution based on $17,000. Greg could jump in here and give you a ballpark.
I would say roughly 10%. It's 765 for FICA and Medicare, and then workers' comp and unemployment on those wages is minimal.
So we're looking at probably roughly $20 an hour.
Okay?
And with a cap of $18,000 a year.
With a cap of $17,000.
$17,000 a year, excuse me. And without any real end date known, let's put it that way.
We're here for the 2021 budget. So the budget before you in this line item is only talking about 2021 for $17,000.
Right, but what I'm trying to get across is we don't want to be in 22, 23, 24 talking about this $17,000 person. Or ultimately saying, you know, they've been here for 2 or 3 years, we should make them a full-time employee.
Well, I don't know who we is, and I have not worked on the budget for 22 or 23. I can tell you that I did the project over in Hudson. We had some interns that worked on a similar basis. We had 2 interns, and they had a larger amount of parcels in town, and it took us 3 years to get all the property records into this system and digitized, and it was 3, I want to say gigabytes, that's the term, maybe it was 3 gigabytes of information. But Plaistow is a smaller community, doesn't have as many properties. But, you know, we have over 100 years worth of records. So I don't know if that answers your question. I guess the bottom line is there is a status of all of the records that is in boxes and not to keep in our staff. When someone asks for a record, multiple people, multiple trips to the building to try to find the records. That's the way it's been. Part of the reason why, Greg, can you just mute? Are you muted? Part of the reason that I brought this project up was because of the fire code. If you know where the clock tower is, everybody knows where that is, but there's a little escape hatch or something to get in the clock tower to wind the clock, and that became a storage area for boxes. There was some unknown weight up there in terms of boxes, and you cannot just keep adding weight to that floor, which is directly over the staircase where you come up and down to the great room. Certainly, we were told by the fire officials that's a fire hazard, that if there was a fire, it would certainly contribute to a collapsing floor. I know you were a selectman at one time, but I guess you would know anecdotally that the storage of records has been just put things in boxes and stuff it somewhere. So this is an approach to not only digitize, but to reduce all the boxes and locate the records and actually reduce some of the fire hazards with it, or preventing the records from getting destroyed, even if it's water damage in the basement.
Wasn't this funded aren't we currently doing this?
Bob, I didn't hear your question because I think there's a delay up in the control room to get your mic. Can you just repeat your question?
Wasn't this funded in March by a warrant
Yes.
article or something?
Yes.
It was,
Well, it was funded in March.
so we're already in the process of doing this.
Yes and no. As you know, COVID started to hit right around that end of February, March. There was there's the sort of the furloughing, laying off, rearranging spaces in town hall to create distance between people, employees, offices. And there were instances where people actually contracted COVID, or they were around people and had to be quarantined. So there was an interruption starting out after this person started, almost a week or two into the job, that caused her to be told not to come into work because of the workspace arrangements. Since that time, we have, in July, I believe, we had made the move of people in the building to the, what we call the town hall annex now, that freed up space on the third floor so this person could have the space to do the, to continue the records management. And then there was another interruption with that person because of the quarantining issue on her side and some family health. And then there was some more quarantining. So it has not been a steady work this year from, I say April because you pass things in March and you don't usually get off the ground till April, from April till now. I hope that answers your question.
So this was funded through the budget or through a warrant article?
My recollection now is it was funded through the budget.
Thank you.
And on the subject of storing away paperwork, I remember you mentioning that you had bought or were going to buy some hermetically sealed boxes for paperwork and utilize the mezzanine at the new highway garage. Has that not happened, or is that waiting for stuff that's gone through the digitizing and saving the hard copies?
Okay, so the answer is a couple answers here. I'll take them one by one. We bought the containers. We have the containers here and stored, ready to use. We are not moving documents to that room until they've been scanned. So no, there's no volume of scanned documents over there, but yes, there is a room on the mezzanine that is ready to for the storage of documents. I can tell you anecdotally that 50% of the weight of the boxes in the clock tower has been moved, because the first step in a scanning project is to go through the file boxes and eliminate multiple copies and prepare the documents for scanning, which reduces down the volume and the weight.
I don't think there's any more questions. We can move on to the next one if you're ready.
Sure. Greg's going to be taking the town clerk one.
As part of the email, the question is, are revenues down? Example vehicle registrations with regard to the town clerk, and the simple answer is no. When the MS 434 was prepared, we actually went from 1,825,000 estimate up to 1,875,000. 1,875,000 from 1,825,000. And if anyone has tried to buy a new car nowadays, you know that there is no inventory. So no, motor vehicle registrations are not down. They're actually up.
I think
You want the next question?
I think there was another question about revenues. Did you want to just take that now since you're not muted?
Are you talking the overall questions? Is there current revenue shortfall?
Yeah.
Overall, I would say slight. And also, is there an anticipated revenue shortfall resulting from COVID? It is very difficult to say specifically. Some areas are up, some areas are down, some areas are not necessarily COVID related. Like you had mentioned at the last meeting, talking about the building permit revenue. You mentioned nonprofit. We didn't discuss nonprofit. During 2019, our building permits were extremely high, and that is because of Exeter Med building their building. They completed their building, so there's not as much revenue in 2020. Now, that is not COVID related. Interest income is down significantly. That is COVID related because of the Fed rate dropping to near nothing. So we did not realize as much revenue this year versus 2019. However, sale of town property, for instance, last year we estimated 2,500 for 2019. For 2020, we have estimated $210,000. Again, not COVID related, but there is a significant increase. So it's very difficult to go through and with a general question, explain revenues being up and being down. I know earlier there was mention of a significant decrease, at least a board member thought there was a significant decrease due to COVID with regards to the meals and rooms tax and possibly the highway block grant. That is not the case. When we set the tax rate this week, meals and room tax came in at $392,000. Last year it was $393,000. Highway block grant came in at $155,000 this year, where last year it was $159,000. So there is no significant decrease in those two areas.
Okay,
So
thank you.
That's good to hear. Interesting, yeah.
Okay, we can move on. I think that covers revenue, unless anybody had any
Okay.
other questions. Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you want to go on to the tax collector?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
So your questions, the first one says, are real estate revenues down? The way the property tax system works in New Hampshire, I don't know how to answer this. Property tax revenues are not down. Property tax revenues are set to balance the appropriations. So the answer to that would be no. The second question, did residents or businesses have trouble paying their July tax bills, possibly due to COVID? And I would say generally no. We had a higher percentage of collections on the July warrant this year than we have the last 2 years, by a couple percentage points.
Okay, that's all really positive information. Did we want to, were there any other, I don't have the questions in front of me.
Okay, next is assessing. And the first question was about the assessing office clerk. Is there still a town employee? Yes. If so, how much does the town get reimbursed from the contract assessor for this position? The answer is nothing. And can we have a copy of the contract with Visions for 2021? There isn't one. But I felt that we would give you the copy of the contract for Visions for 2020, since I thought that the intent was to see the contract for Visions, perhaps not for 2021, because there is no contract with Visions for 2021.
Okay.
And back to the employee, there's been a transition period where a town employee had allocated more time towards assessing, and we are reducing down that employee's time in assessing. What we didn't want to do is go from, we have a staff member assisting with assessing, because as you know, the assessing contractor that we have on site is not on site every day. So what we did is we reduced down the amount of hours allocated to the town employee, and we'll continue to do that. I believe that we're probably down to an allocation of under 10 hours a week now with respect to the portion of the employee's allocation of wages from the assessing budget. Is there any follow-up questions to that?
I don't see any.
Yeah.
Oh,
Where is the rest of it then, Mark? Where is the rest of it being used?
The rest of what, sir?
In other words, if you're allocating only 10 hours to the assessing at this point,
Yes.
is that employee still on site and only using 10 hours on the assessing? What's the, are they working additional hours beyond the 10 hours?
Yes, that is a full-time person that does, and I'm probably gonna miss out of what she does, but I'm gonna try to capture it all. Human resources, human services, payroll, accounts payable, and assessing. Greg, did I miss anything? That's 5 different jobs.
No, I think that covers it.
Okay.
And since you asked, please help me find a replacement for that person that we can hire and that we can pay the same money to do 5 jobs, because I'm having trouble hiring people to do 1 job.
Okay. Was that all of the questions, I think? I think we covered them.
It pretty much all of them. It asks if you can get revenue reports, like expense reports, and of course you can. And then the other item that you asked was, can you also get a copy of the water budget? Which with the selectmen, it's in your folders tonight.
So that revenue report will show what you answered tonight. It'll reflect those differences when we get that.
I would imagine it would, and I can answer any questions that you might have. I mean, what I have to go on is the estimates, and so some of the revenues we haven't received or realized yet because it's October, and we do billing for some things, you know, in November and December. So, I mean, it will accurately reflect pretty much everything I've mentioned.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bob, go ahead.
When will we be receiving the monthly budget actual report?
I can't, your microphone's not on, we can't hear you.
When can we expect the monthly budget to actual report for October?
The monthly budget to actual report is on your budget sheets that you have received. They have October numbers, so that is your October report. If I'm not mistaken.
It does say up to October, yes.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions for them?
No.
No?
All of them.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. I didn't realize you guys were going to be here. I appreciate
Oh,
it.
you're welcome. We'll be here for the rest of the meeting.
Okay. Did anybody else have any other things to add on the budgets that I have on the agenda? We can take them under consideration tonight.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what is that what it seems to change every year, so we're gonna do motions, take under consideration as
Yes.
we did last year, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we don't have to vote on that, we could just have a consensus. Do we have to have motions for each one to take under consideration?
Right.
We do have to have,
You should.
okay,
For each one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, should.
okay. Does someone want to make a motion to take the executive budget under consideration for $306,297?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Dennis seconds. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Okay, the next one was the town clerk budget. Would someone like to make a motion to take the town clerk budget for $107,453 under consideration?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Okay, the next one is elections. I'll make a motion to take the election budget for $12,095 under consideration.
I'll second it.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. The assessing budget, does someone want to make a motion to take the assessing budget for $111,818 under consideration?
Make that motion.
Okay. I'll second. Dennis can second it. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.
Which one was that?
Assessing. The next one is for tax collector.
What about finance?
What
Did
happened to
we-
finance?
We didn't do finance.
I don't have finance on the agenda for tonight.
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry.
wasn't on the agenda.
I'm sorry.
So tax collectors next.
I make a motion that we take the $48,970 under consideration.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Cemeteries is next. So that is,
8,000.
yep, is
I
the,
make, I make a motion, we take the 8,000 under consideration. The cemetery?
I'll second it. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. And then conflict of interest is next for $250.
I'll make a motion to take the conflict of interest budget under consideration for $250.
All those, is there a
Can we
second?
get a second?
Second.
Carl seconds. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay, that motion carries. We had the fire department presentation, but I don't know if anybody wants to take that under consideration or,
Well, I take it under consideration because we always
Yeah.
debate it afterwards.
okay.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion to take the fire department budget under consideration for $918,285.
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay, so the fire is under consideration. Okay, for new business, I didn't know if we were gonna have minutes, but did everybody have a chance to review the minutes that were in the folder? Do you wanna approve them now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from November 10th, 2020.
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion?
I had an exchange with Mr. Sherman that isn't in the minutes at all. I want to make sure it gets put in there, and I can't repeat it verbatim because I can't remember it. So if the recording secretary might be able to go back to the Vimeo and include that. I asked him about his involvement in amending two lines in the highway department budget at deliberative session, and he answered, and that isn't recorded in this minutes. Thank you.
Towards the end.
It was right at the end of Mr. Sherman's comments.
So should we wait for the amended to vote on them? Or do you wanna withdraw?
Yeah.
I'll withdraw the motion then.
And then, the only thing that I wanted to bring up for new business was, about assessing, just because they're using 2019's assessments. I didn't know, as a budget committee, I feel like that's gonna put a pretty big burden on the taxpayer because we don't have the new information that includes businesses, which is what we were hoping for this year. So I just wanted to discuss that as a budget committee, what our thoughts were.
Well, I hate kicking things down the road, you know? I don't have the right answer for it right now, but I hate kicking the can down the road on assessing.
Bob?
We were looking forward to a new set of eyes on our assessing and hoping that we wouldn't see a repeat of last year when we were reassessed. Because last year, we lost approximately $1.2 million in commercial tax revenue that we as citizens or residents had to make up. So
Greg wants to add something.
I can say that I'm disappointed.
Greg?
Last night, when we presented to the board, I had summarized the MS1 from 2019 to 2020. The residential, overall, the valuation of taxable property was up $18.8 million from 2019 to 2020. 4.3 million was in the area of residential buildings. 5.9 million is in the area of commercial and industrial property, and 8.8 million is in the neighborhood of utilities. So just for information for the Budget Committee.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yep.
What was was there an explanation given why the 2019 as opposed to the 2020?
I think it had to do with the visions, is that correct? Is that why we're using 2019?
Mark agrees.
Yeah, that's correct.
I just wanted to discuss it, so, I mean, if we don't have the new numbers, we're kind of dealing with the same burden, so I just wanted to know how we wanted to treat that when we're looking at all the budgets, to know that we might be paying more in the long run.
We'll know soon.
Yep.
We'll get our tax bills probably early December.
Madam Chairman, could I be
Yes.
recognized to recognize Greg Colby?
Oh, yeah, you're not on the screen, so I have no idea. Yes,
That's why
please.
I'm to be recognized. Greg, could you give the breakdown of setting the tax rate on what went up and what went down? In particular, the highlight is how much did the tax share of the town go down? And how much did the school, both local and state, go up? And how much did the county go down? So that you could explain the difference.
Yep. With the final tax rate that was set today, from 2019 to 2020, the town portion went down 43 cents. The county share went down 10 cents. And then the school portion between the local and the state went up a combined 87 cents.
Okay.
So there was a net increase on the tax bill from the result of the decreases and then the increases, which is on the local and state school side. And the net difference was an increase in the tax bill, which is that substantial increase on the school side. And is that the 43 cents or is it 34 cents?
It's up a net 34 cents.
Okay.
So the important thing to know is that the town portion went down. We cannot control the school or the state portion from going up. Obviously, that is the other 74% of the tax bill that we have no control over.
Bob?
I'd just like to mention one other thing. Last year, all of those tax rates went down, and our tax bills went up significantly. I just wanted to throw that out. Tax rates don't tell the full story, that's for sure.
And the tax bills went up, and I think one of the main reasons why we have been looking at Vision software, as we all know, is when the tax rate goes down, but our assessment goes up, we probably will pay a little bit more. But if the tax rate goes down and your assessment doesn't change as it did in commercial, their tax, what they pay in taxes goes down. They get a tax break while the residents get a tax increase. And I think that's why the main effort was gone into going to Vision software to try to make that more equitable.
Well said.
Have we gotten any clue at all of where the school is going with their budget? Has anybody heard anything?
No.
Okay.
Oh, Julie?
Well, I'll just, there was a public meeting and there was some information put out as far as costs for the school, because I'm not happy about those large increases in the huge budget that they have. But a couple notes to make in generalities that I had it written down too. I'll find it.
Paper's there, Julian.
Yeah, I know. I pulled out a piece of paper and I lost the one that went with it. Just took some quick notes. All right. There's a lot of information that went out, but basically their budget went up about 2.9 million. And it was 1.6 million was salary increases. 1.1 million about approximately was teacher retirement went up. Other non-teacher retirements went up about 323,000. And there were actually some savings because they figured out there was actually about $255,000 in savings due to the SAU changes. But it's about a 3.99% increase. But most of these increases are nothing that no one had control of because they were all part of union contracts. Basically all the bargain, what do they call it, collaborative?
Collective bargaining.
Collective, I couldn't think of the word right now, but yeah, collective bargaining, which are in contracts, and they can't change that. Another reason it went up locally and not in the state is the state has been shifting the burden, I think about 3% again this year, and it'll be more next year. They're taking the retirement benefits part of their packages, which have been paid in, are being shifted from being funded by the state tax over to the local tax. So you're going to see that shift again every year. So some of that increase is because the burden is going from the state to local. And I can kind of see where it kind of makes sense because people always think that the money from the state is free money. It's not, because we pay that too. And so that's probably why you don't see the state income tax part, the state part or the county part increase, because they've actually reduced the school part, which went to the local school budget. So it kind of sounds a little confusing, but you can see it's like just pocketbook A going to pocketbook B. And it's almost like talking about tax rates and tax bills. So I don't know what their reasoning is. Maybe they're saying, well, if it goes back to the local level, people will start looking, seeing the increases. Maybe they'll start thinking more about how they budget and how they do their bargaining or whatever. But whatever, that's kind of the reason the school went up. It was nothing to do with any new things being added or anything like that. It's
If
just a matter
that's
of
the case,
collective
then
bargaining.
I hope everybody does take notice.
I think people have not been taking notice. They always look at our budget, which is around 10 million or under. They're not looking at the $70 million budget plus.
Yeah. But that's always been the cry.
Yes,
It's
it
the
has.
school. It's the school. And I think that henceforth, wherever we can save in town, we save because it's something. I mean, you just can't keep having taxes go up. You'd like to think that, level fund maybe for even a year, just to give everybody a breather. And because that the school isn't going to change. They're always going to be asking for more money.
Yeah.
And even a small thing like the fire department, I mean, sure, that's on a $400,000 house, it's $87.88 per year. But that's just one department, When it all totals up, if you end up, and I'm just shooting a number out there off the hip, but if it all totals up and it's an extra $300 or $400 a year out of your pocket, it's a lot of money, especially when you top that off with what the school will do. So I think that, we're doing our due diligence, and I think we'll have to continue to do our due diligence.
Yeah.
Um,
All we could do is our part.
That's right.
And that's what I had said last year, you know, we can control this budget. We don't have control over what the school does. So let's start on this level and offer whatever relief we can, because we can't predict what the school does. But I was under the impression that whenever there was a surplus with the school, it goes back to the taxpayers.
Well, it's kind of the same system as the town. They take their unassigned budget and they put a credit toward the next year's budget.
But we
It's
don't
kind of
do
how
that.
it works. So you don't actually see, you know, it's not something that's visible, but it's done similar way.
But we use our unassigned fund balance to pay for new projects instead of paying
Right.
down the tax rate.
Instead of asking for more money in a warrant article, sometimes, it's still a warrant article, and the voter still decides. So it's just a different way of shifting the money, but it comes out in the end the same.
Right.
The school usually does a combination, so they'll
Yeah.
ship some back, but they'll also use some of it for projects.
You know, unless you actually watch their meetings and watch their budget meetings, you'll find out it doesn't work all that different. I think one thing I did learn was that the budget, like here, the budget committee has the final say in the budget. In the school, actually, the school board has the final say, which I didn't realize until this year. I didn't really know that. It actually worked the other way around.
Well, it's incumbent upon all of us to make our voices heard at the school. That's all.
Yes, it's part of our tax bill, so.
Right, a large part.
You need to go and take part, just like everyone does in the town. I think the town participation rate and this budget committee and the board of selectmen and the town employees like the town manager and the finance director have done a really good job considering costs go up, yet the costs haven't been rising as high as the, let's say, cost of living has been going up. And I find that kind of incredible, actually, in the sense that our budget is pretty much under control. You can't, it's not ever going to go down. It doesn't happen. We have a lot of employees doing multiple jobs instead of having separate employees. What more can you do? One person's doing 5 jobs. Instead of paying 5 employees, you're paying 1 employee. It's incredible, some of the good employees we have in this town that do those multiple jobs when other towns will have a separate person for each of those positions. So, like you said, we can just do the best we can.
Okay, so our next meeting is next week. I'll put a list together of which departments will discuss and have questions, and I'll email them. And if you are coming and don't put anything in writing, just email me and let me know that you guys are coming to the meeting, so I know ahead of time. Yeah, to Mark and Greg. That would be helpful. Okay, I'll adjourn the meeting at 8:40.
Thank you, everyone.